Hey everybody, what's going on? It's wilkyb, and this is another Advanced Wars by Web upload I'm doing here. And I'm basically reviewing all of the maps on Global League, the Fog of War maps. And if you know of my previous videos, I don't like these maps because they follow a rule that the Advanced Wars by Web map committee place on people who want to make it to Global League. If you make a map and you want it to make Global League, you have to use their rules. And resultingly, if you use their rules, maps end up like this. And these maps in general, I'll just say, 2 base 1 infantry doesn't necessarily mean that the map is going to be awful, but it definitely does. It is telling of a map is going to be awful. It's not just the 2 base 1 infantry, but it's like the positioning and the arrangement of tiles on the map. Like on this map, there is no early game at all. You cannot scout with a recon your opponent and see what they're doing. There's no reason to figure out what they're doing because you know what they're going to be doing every time. There's no development phase, and there's no tit for tat throughout the development phase. So what happens on this map and a lot of the maps on Global League, I'm not going to repeat myself because a lot of the maps are really similar to this. When you get to the middle of the map here, inevitably that happens because you can't slow down the early game. It just turns into a death ball. Like 2 giant forces meet at the middle of the map, and then it just starts like dogpiling on top of it behind that because there was no early game interaction that could prevent that. Not necessarily that the early game prevents a death ball, but it happens necessarily on every single game in this, every single map in this tournament, or in this Global League. So the next one we're going through here, Operation Mincemeat, and it's the same thing. The maps are the bases are completely opposite to each other. So there's no early gameplay, there's nothing you can do. Like there's no development phase that can be halted, that can be slowed down, and there's no reason for me to go scout. Like I'm repeating, there's no early game, so there's no reason for me to go scout what my opponent's doing. Like it results in the same gameplay loop and the same death ball interaction every single time. Witch Hunt. This map is kind of interesting because it's really, really bad. It's really bad, and it's made it to the Global League. And it's made it to the Global League recently because I think there is sort of like a thing going on internally where the Global League is starting to realize like maybe their maps are really boring and they do the same thing over and over again. And this map is no exception. It does the same thing over and over again, and it does it even worse than other maps on Global League, because I guess they're trying to shake things up. So I look at this map and I think, okay, they're kind of close to getting like a better gameplay loop with respect to the early game, but the middle of the map here is so useless, and still the bases are too far apart, and they're blocked by this terrain. You can't interact with your opponent on this map early. Even though the bases are kind of relatively close to each other, that would make that somewhat acceptable. So this map is awful. There's no early game. There's like 3 contested cities here, and that's it. Like that's the whole map. So again, you just produce stuff and they make it to the middle of the map and you capture all along the way freely and happily and la-di-da, and then it's just death ball interaction over 4 cities. Like this is such a bad map. It's awful. Warped Streams. This map, there's a lot of tiles and stuff to it, and it looks kind of confusing, but it's bad. It's a bad map. It's a bad map because the bases are completely opposite of each other, so there's no early gameplay, there's no reason to scout, there's nothing you can do to stop the progress of the development phase. There's nothing you can do. So inevitably it turns into a death ball. Yeah, this map is just garbage. Misty. This map is garbage. It's garbage. There's 2 bases opposite map of each other. And, you know, I should be careful. It's not complete garbage because there is a mid-game to it. There is a death ball scenario that happens. That happens even on my maps with an early game to it. But there's no early game, so this map is just awful. I like that there's two HQs, because that kind of shakes things up. That means that there's less chance of the game ending in a death ball scenario, because you can actually win using the HQ capture, but this map is just awful. Again, this map is awful. Lulu Lagoon is awful. I know already. Dum dum da dum dum. Yeah, this map is actually, it's awful, but it's better than some of the maps because, you know, the maps, the bases are completely opposite of each other, which is terrible. But what makes it a bit more interesting is that you can actually ferry the units that you produce from these bases to different starting locations, whereas on the other maps, like 1v1 Sum, which I've not shown yet, the path that your units take to exit the corner of the map that you start in is like set in stone. But at least this one, you can kind of choose, like, do I want to drop here? Do I want to drop here, over here? But even still, it's garbage because there's no early game. It doesn't matter. Like how it does slightly in the slightest matter. But like the early game is not there, so it inevitably develops into a death ball. So it's not that I don't like these little gimmicky things, which they are gimmicky. I don't like it. I don't like it. It's not that I don't like the gimmick, but it's just that it's useless on a map like this, where it just creates the same gameplay loop over and over again. Garbage map. Garbage. Do 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 do. This map is awful. Bases are in the opposite corner. How do you get out of here? Like, this is such a headache of a map. It's so bad. I don't want to look at it. It's terrible. No early gameplay. Death ball no matter what. Which one was it? El Dorado? Yeah. So now we're doing Dragons in the Dark. So this map is a classic, and this is S rank. This is probably one of the top 5 maps on the website because it's 2 base 1 infantry. Or for a 2 base 1 infantry map, it's still bad. But it's still the most fun, one of the most fun maps that you can play that uses 2 base 1 infantry. Same deal as, it's not as terrible of a culprit. There's a bit of an early game to this, but still, pretty much everything meets at the middle of the map, and the bases are too far apart, and yeah, it's just still not a good map. Like, if I had to play on this map, I would probably give it like a 4 out of 10. Yeah, this is a bad map. However, there is a good map, if I haven't mentioned, Caustic Finale, that uses 2 base 1 infantry, and that map I would actually rate it like 8 out of 10. Okay, so it's not that I think 2 base 1 infantry is terrible by default, it's not, but like, just every map except for that one is like 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10 at the most. Like, this map is like 4 out of 10 because there's no early gameplay. There's no reason to scout. The gameplay loop is the same, and it always ends in a death ball. Yeah, so bad map, Dirty Martini, and yeah, that's a bad map. It's bad. This map is terrible. Just terrible. How do you get out of here? How do you get out of this corner? Awful, 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 awful. So bad. Such a bad map. Oh my god. So terrible. Backstabbers. Alright, we're almost done. So, that's a comforting thought. Again, this is a bad map. I'd give it like a 3 out of 10, maybe even a 2 out of 10, because there is a bit of a gameplay loop that's, you scout, you see what's going on with your opponent, like that, but again, your opposite corners, there's no recon, there's nothing early game to this, but there is some play with respect to like revealing what your opponent's doing. I like that, but it's just lame. The bases are opposite of each other. The development happens like no matter what. So, another bad map. 1 versus 1 Somme. This map is awful. This is like, this is like a 2 out of 10 map. It's got early game to it, or excuse me, it's got a mid game and a late game to it. So like, there is a point in the map where like two armies are gonna meet, and they're gonna start fighting, and then like a death ball battle, and a dog pile behind it kind of topples over top of it, which is lame, because it inevitably happens. So there's no early game on this map. You can't scout. There's no reason to scout, and it just inevitably ends in with a death ball. So that's what I have to say about this map. Struggle grinding. Again, the bases are opposite of the field of each other. Like, there's no early game. There's no reason to scout. The only scouting that happens is like the middle of the map when the forces are starting to like get close to each other. So there's no way to prevent the development phase. Awful. Rainbow's End. Awful. Awful map. Terrible. Yeah, terrible. 3 bases way back here, airport back here. I guess I understand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, I don't even. You can't even ferry stuff. Like, I don't know what this naval port is for. So, yeah, terrible map. No early gameplay. No way to get a recon out here. There's forests stopping, like, impeding your way. Terrible, terrible map. And last but not least, thank the heavens, it's Butterfly Net. Again, this is just like the previous map, but terrible. No early game. You're blocked in. Just terrible, terrible map. I'm repeating myself, so. Yep, so that does it, you guys. That's it. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to show up the Caustic Finale, and we're going to show how this map does the 2 base infantry properly, and the early game properly. And I'll go into detail exactly why, is because the bases are close in proximity to each other. When the bases are close like this, it sort of forces players to interact with each other. And player-player interaction happening early on in the game is really important. When the bases are close like this, it's just fun. Shit happens quick. Like, it's an impactful game, and it happens fast. To be honest, I do think that like this map doesn't realize what it's doing well, but it does it well. Out of all of the maps on this website, this is the best one. This is the best map on the website that does 2 base 1 infantry. And it's, yeah, again, it's good because at the beginning of the game, you actually have to like scout to see what your opponent is doing. And there's different options that your opponent can do that are still good and are not like an automatic loss. And it's dependent on both players to scout and see what the other player is doing and to sort of adapt accordingly to a certain degree. So this map is really good. There's an early game to it. You can actually use recons out here, information for scouting, and like the first like 6 turns of the game, there's actually like good reasons to get your recon out on the map to attack their development phase and stuff like that. This is a really good map. I would give this map like 8 out of 10. I think I've given it a 9 here. It's an 8 in my opinion because it's kind of small, and I think there are better ways to produce an early game, personally, in my opinion. But this map is like the best on the website. This is the best map on the website that does 2 base 1 infantry. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that. So if you guys like these videos, if you agree with me, etc., that's great. You can like and subscribe and share these kinds of videos with your friends. And without further ado, thank you for watching, and adios.